cutting-edge new agreement is being hailed as a major victory for the continent's poorest nations fighting AIDS. A look at the Grand Canyon in the United States, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. And in Ghana, dancing pallbearers give departed loved ones a joyous farewell. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidu in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin this evening with a scornful speech given by Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe at the United Nations General Assembly. The 93-year-old leader pulled no punches, calling U.S. President Donald Trump a giant gold Goliath. Mugabe said his country has defeated the monster called imperialism in the past, and that they are ready to defeat another monster by whatever name.
May I say to the United States President, Mr. Trump, please blow your trumpet. Blow your trumpet in a musical way towards the values of unity, peace, cooperation, togetherness, dialogue, which we have always stood for and which are well written in our very sacred document, the Charter of the United Nations.
Now, in a landmark deal, HIV patients in Africa will now have access to the latest drugs for $75 a year. The arrangement is a major victory for the poorest nations fighting AIDS, a health epidemic with unrestrained global reach. Here's VOA's Tina Trin.
In the fight to end the AIDS epidemic, a major victory achieved. Cutting-edge drugs available for the first time to patients in Africa at a mere $75 a year. The announcement was made Thursday during the United Nations General Assembly.
What we are talking about today with this life-changing announcement is about the quality of medicine, but is about equity, is about dignity, is about access to medicine as a human right.
A deal between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Indian drug makers Mylan Laboratories and Aurobindo Pharma will bring relief to the poorest of those afflicted with HIV, of which there are 36.7 million globally.
The spiraling cost of healthcare provision in every country in the world needs to be addressed, and we can only address this in ways that increase equity in access to services based on need and not on ability to pay.
Dolutegravir, or DTG, is a key component of the combination drug that was until recently limited to richer countries.
It's more effective, it has fewer side effects, it's less prone to resistance, and now, thanks to this landmark price deal, it's cheaper.
According to Reuters, the $75 annual cost is less than the price for 1 day's supply of DTG in the U.S.
We estimate that over the next 6 years, South Africa will potentially save up to $900 million. This is a huge saving.
The reduced cost of DTG will ultimately mean wider and faster access for populations across the globe.
It took us more than 10 years to transit the efavirenz, the current treatment, from the rich countries to the downstream, to the field. And now we are bringing DTG in less than 3 years, which is a record time.
For the world's neediest HIV and AIDS patients, the time couldn't come soon enough. Tina Trin, VOA News, New York.
Now, for more news on the UNGA, joining us from UN headquarters in New York is VOA's Margaret Bashir. Margaret, it has been an eventful week there that included talks on refugees fleeing Myanmar. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, the issue of the Rohingya Muslims leaving Myanmar has been a very urgent issue that leaders have been addressing here in their speeches this week. The United Nations said today that since August 25th, so basically 1 month, 429,000 people have fled from Myanmar, which also is known as Burma. into Bangladesh, which is the neighboring country. And tomorrow, the UN refugee chief, Filippo Grandi, will be going to Bangladesh to see the situation of these people, because the government there is rushing to help them, but at the same time, they're coming so quickly that many of them are living in very poor conditions. The UN also said today that this is the largest mass movement of refugees in decades. And the British publication The Economist did a survey of refugee data that they published, and it says that they compared the data with the Rwandan genocide in 1994, and they're saying the Rohingyas are fleeing Myanmar faster today than even the Hutus did in 1994. So it's a really big crisis. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh spoke last night here at the General Assembly. Her name is Sheikh Hasina, and she made some demands to the international community. She said that they need to end the violence immediately. The UN needs to send a fact-finding mission to Myanmar to find out exactly what's going on there, and they need to create safe zones in Myanmar for the civilians so that they can stay in their own country. So now, because of other crises with the Rohingyas in the past, Bangladesh is looking at something about 700,000 Rohingya refugees in their country. So it's a crisis the UN is trying to prevent from escalating. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said it is equal to ethnic cleansing. So the alarm bells are up here, and world leaders are very concerned about it.
A very painful story there, Margaret. What about the African leaders expected to speak later on today?
We heard from Paul Biya of Cameroon this morning. This afternoon, we're going to hear from the prime ministers of Ethiopia and Somalia, and Kenya is also expected to address the GA today, so we'll be listening to their messages.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for your fantastic reporting.
Thank you.
Margaret Bashir reporting live for us there from the United Nations. For all of your UN General Assembly news, be sure to follow Margaret on Twitter @mbashir. Lesotho's Prime Minister Dr. Thomas Thabane is attending this year's UNGA in New York. He also shared his thoughts with VOA's Peter Clotty on the Southern African Development Corporation initiative to organize a national dialogue aimed at easing tensions and resolving political concerns in his Southern African kingdom.
We have to reassess the whole situation about the need for a formal army of that size. We have to go right back to the basics and weigh our odds, because there have been so many upheavals in Lesotho. And if you trace all those upheavals and look at them, you find at some point the army comes in. Now, there's a begging question now. Do we need a traditional army? And we should be brave enough to ask ourselves that question and find an answer. If the answer is yes, we carry it out. If the answer is no, we don't carry it out.
Now, that was Peter Clotty interviewing Lesotho Prime Minister Dr. Thomas Thabane. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says his government will support the country's electoral board as it conducts the rerun presidential election, now scheduled for October 26. Kenyatta addressed the nation on Thursday, accusing the country's Supreme Court of subverting the democratic will of the people by invalidating the results of the August 8 presidential election.
The Supreme Court owes Kenyans an explanation on how such a monstrous injustice could have taken place. Not only did the judgment rob the Kenyan people of their democratic right as exercised on August 8th, but it also now has the potential to throw our country into judicial chaos. I would like to state clearly that the government will do everything under the law to facilitate the IEBC to conduct another free, fair, and credible election in accordance with the ruling of the Supreme Court, an election that will once again enable the people of Kenya to exercise their democratic right of choice.
A panel of U.S. experts on Africa met in Washington to discuss the state of security on the continent, outlining hotspots and terrorist threats. Panelists discussed insecurity in Somalia and Libya, violent extremism in the Sahel-Maghreb region, political instability in Kenya, as well as threats posed by Boko Haram insurgents in Nigeria. Amanda Dory is former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense.
If you look across the Sahelian band, you have half a dozen countries there that are experiencing challenges, the countries of the Lake Chad Basin, and then the Horn of Africa, as you've mentioned. And not to leave out North Africa, which in some geographies is included bureaucratically and some isn't. But Libya remains a concern, clearly. Islamic State and Al-Qaeda have been able to inflame a series of grievances in these different countries, and you see a competition now between those groups playing out.
J. Peter Pham is the director, Africa Center, Atlantic Council. He authored a book titled Somalia, the Most Failed State.
Large parts of Somalia have actually achieved, in the 2 decades of state failure since the collapse of the last truly national government, achieved a great deal of stability by turning in on themselves, building up local legitimacy, building up local security. So we need to figure out a way to balance the two, the territorial integrity and sovereignty of states, at the same time working with effective actors.
Former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs Jendai Fraser spoke about the impact of Boko Haram's insurgency in Nigeria.
If you look at the impact of Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria, what it's actually doing is forcing a rapid rate of urbanization, even more rapid than you see in Lagos City, which is one of the 3 biggest cities in Africa.
Retired U.S. General Carter Ham said Libya's security situation remains highly problematic.
We have to define what are our security objectives in Libya, and I think they should begin with maintaining the territorial integrity of the state and denying safe haven for violent extremist organizations inside Libya.
The panelists also discussed Kenya's protracted election process, with some wondering if the East African country would remain stable following the annulment of the August 8 presidential elections.
It's the question of institution development, as far as I'm concerned, and it's also the question of the political maturity of a polity that can then have sustainable security and stability. The Supreme Court is an independent court based on the 2010 new Constitution. So it's working, and we just have to tolerate a little bit of more uncertainty, and the market has to tolerate a bit more uncertainty. But the institutions are actually operating the way they want to, despite, I have to say, some irresponsible statements by the political candidates themselves.
General Ham also outlined AFRICOM's role for a secure Africa.
I think the underlying purpose of the command is to partner with, enable, and develop African security forces so that they are increasingly capable of providing for their own security, contributing to regional security.
There is no doubt a stable and secure Africa augurs well for individual countries, creating jobs, opportunities, and security for future generations. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a closer look at one of America's most breathtaking national parks. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Now, the Grand Canyon in the United States is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and it has inspired adventurers, poets, and painters for hundreds of years. Whether looking down from its massive rim or up from the rushing water of the Colorado River, it's easy to see how it got its name. National Parks traveler Micah Meyer explored the majestic site during an 8-day adventure he says he will never forget. He shared highlights with VOA's Julie Tabo.
The Grand Canyon in the southwestern state of Arizona is a stunning creation. National Parks traveler Micah Meyer can see why.
It's grand. That's the right word to use for it, because whether standing at the rim and overlooking it or being down on the river, you just get a sense of how massive the Grand Canyon is.
Shaped by millions of years of erosion, the distinctly colored canyon is 446 kilometers long and averages about 1,220 meters deep, the length of 11 football fields.
What's so unique is that you have all these layers of the earth that were once underground that have been uplifted and then eroded away, so scientists can see millions and millions and millions of years of Earth's crust history.
Scientists and visitors both can explore the massive canyons by foot and by raft.
Here we go!
Which is what Micah did on an 8-day, 362-kilometer rafting trip on the Colorado River.
Coming up on the rapids here.
One of his favorite experiences was a trip to the Little Colorado River, a tributary just off the main river.
What made this Little Colorado so special is that it was this almost baby blue, light blue, white color, and you see the moment where it converges with this dark gray Colorado River, and these two vastly different colors coming together.
Micah and his fellow travelers enjoyed the creeks.
Lay flat! Lay flat! Oh! Oh!
The waterfalls, and places where the water is still and where one can see naturally forming springs.
Rapids!
But the highlight for Micah was navigating the white water rapids that the river is famous for.
All ready to go for Lava Falls in the front of the boat.
Visitors also learn about the river's rich history.
To the right, you will see some historic Native American food storage granaries.
And check out the wildlife, like the endangered California condor.
They brought them to the Grand Canyon to try to provide a habitat that they thought would help them thrive, and thus far, it's been doing pretty well.
In the evenings, Micah and his group camped on the shore, a perfect way to end each day in one of the world's most beautiful and natural playgrounds.
Everybody give me a wave! The world could have gone to nuclear war for all we would have known. It was just this amazing moment to truly be in nature, truly be void of the distractions of the world, and enjoy that splendor of nature, enjoy the people you're around in a way that is so rare today.
1, 2, 3, 4!
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, Ghana's dancing pallbearers send loved ones off in style. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
In Libya, at least 8 migrants have drowned and some 90 others have gone missing after a shipwreck off the coast of Sabratha. In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta calls the results of presidential poll a monstrous injustice and emphasizes the government's support for the country to hold another election. In Uganda, authorities arrest demonstrators defying a police order banning protest after the proposed removal of presidential age limits. Finally, in Togo, thousands march across the country against government reforms that will allow the Nyasimbe family dynasty to rule until 2030.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. They may be dressed in black, but these pallbearers are anything but solemn. Led by Benjamin Aidu, they are bringing music and dance to the traditionally sober event. This new style of burial is now increasingly being copied all over Ghana. People have started to see burials more as a way to reunite with family and to celebrate the life of the deceased. Cost depends on the number of pallbearers and the costumes they need to wear, with pallbearers all in white charging between $225 to $270. Despite the prices, the demand is so high that 5 more companies have sprung up in Accra, copying Aidu's style. Next up, the Japanese video game industry is finding its way out of the doldrums by adopting new technology for decades-old titles. Among the traditional cosplay catwalks and creepy androids, the game industry is showcasing its latest titles at the annual Tokyo Game Show. Games are taking on more features, such as massive online communities, as well as immersive virtual reality, not only leading to new kinds of games, but also helping revive interest in old styles. And that's what's trending today. Now it's Music Makers Friday, and today we'll introduce you to the sizzling sounds of Cameroonian singer, rapper, and songwriter Naomi Achu. But first, joining me in the studio is David Bande, host and producer of VOA's African Beat radio program. David, it's great to have you on Africa 54.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here again today.
Now, David, you have interviewed Naomi, and her music is making very big strides, especially in West Africa. Tell us a little bit about her musical journey.
Naomi is such a powerful instrument for African music from Africa. She was born in Cameroon, and she's lived all her life singing. But now the way she's going, she sings Afrobeat music, fusing the African kind of cultural kind of music to the Western world. And that makes her one of the best. And she's got so much energy, And I tell you, right now, she's one of the best from Africa.
Now, you're talking about much energy. And, we have one of her music videos, because she has many. And this one is about busybodies. Let's take a listen.
Okay.
Very nice, David. I even like the colors in the background. Now, tell us, what is she talking about here? What's the message?
Well, the song itself, Busybody, when you talk about busybody from where we come from even here, it simply means people who gossip.
It's a slang.
You know, like poking your nose into somebody else's business. But this song has got a different meaning when it comes to the Cameroonian dialect, especially from the Francophone, the Anglophone area. Busybody she is actually talking about her mother, because this song was inspired by her mother. When they say you're a busybody from the Cameroonian perspective, that means somebody who does not find time for herself. The mom is a lady who does not find time for herself. She's very busy thinking about her husband. She's very busy thinking about her children, how to provide for them, how to clean the house, so that she's working 24/7 round the clock. And so, mommy, your body, you are always busy. When will you have time for yourself? You know,
so
and you're always
mommy
taking
to
care
have
of
time
us.
for herself.
Exactly. So there's no way the mom does not have time. She will be ready to cook for her husband. And you know, when you look at our parents back home, when they cook, they seldom eat. They have to wait until their husbands come back from
has
work.
Eaten,
yes, they
children.
provide for other people, and they forget about themselves. So that's what they refer to as busybody. That means you are always working, you are always on the go.
So we have to reflect on our lives and take time for ourselves.
For ourselves, and that's what she was telling her mom. You know, incidentally, like I said, the song was inspired when her mom paid her a visit, and in her own home, the mom was like taking over. I said, Mama, when will you find time for yourself? This is my own house. You know, make time for yourself. Get some rest. You are here on vacation. Mama said, no, I can't rest. And then he said, Mama, you are too busy body. Your body is too busy for yourself. And so she went to the studio and got the song and dedicated it to her mother. So we're dedicating this to all the hardworking women of Africa that has been taking care of us as men and even as our children.
Very briefly, what's next for Naomi?
Oh, well, Naomi is such... Right now, she's just completed a gospel song with one of Uganda's top gospel artists, Pastor Okudi, and that one will be coming out very shortly. I'm telling you, it is going to be a blast.
David will be watching. Thank you, David, for joining us in Africa 54 on the Music Makers segment. To learn more about David Bande and his VOA radio show, visit Facebook and type in the keywords African Beat on the Voice of America. And you can see what time his program can be heard in your area and get more information about some of his featured artists. And so we leave you now with more of the heart sounds from Naomi Achu. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.
You go wrong when she show you go
Welcome to English in a Minute. Today's episode won't cost you anything.
Freebie.
Let's see what this one is about.
Anna, I love my job.
Oh yeah? Why is that?
I get so many freebies from the bands I write about. CDs, t-shirts, water bottles, even tickets to see them perform.
Wow. The only freebie I ever got from my